Greetings, CinemaBlend fans, and welcome to HeroBlend number 157. I am your host, events editor, Eric Eisenberg, and if I'm being truly honest, I have been looking forward to this for a long time. 2 weeks ago, I was supposed to do an episode with a spoiler-free discussion about Black Panther. Unfortunately, the Deadpool 2 and Venom trailers dropped. Last week, I was going to do that same show. Unfortunately, I was out of town. So, now that Black Panther is out, we can finally discuss everything about this movie, and that's exactly what I want to dedicate this episode to, because I am a huge fan of Black Panther. I know this movie completely is causing a phenomenon all around the world right now. Obviously, this past weekend, it made a ridiculous amount of money. People are talking about it. It's really an incredible thing to experience, but even just within the global phenomenon that it's caused, it's amazing how good of a movie it just is all by itself. So what I would love for you guys to discuss in this episode is just the kind of details about the ending of Black Panther, the post-credit scenes, how we expect it to kind of affect the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Partially because if you look at the Infinity War trailer, there clearly is a good amount of influence from Wakanda, and that the whole nation seems like it's going to be a pretty important location. There's certain elements within the characters that we can expect to change. So hit the comment section below and tell us basically what you thought of this movie and what you would like to discuss. I will start just by kind of highlighting the thing that I loved most about this movie, which was Michael B. Jordan's Eric Killmonger, because Marvel, I mean, it's no secret. Marvel Studios has, since the very beginning, not been amazing when it comes to their antagonist characters. Part of that has been a result of what have been referred to as mirror villains, which is to say it's basically the hero except a mirrored version of it. And since the beginning of the Marvel Universe, where you had Iron Man facing off against Ironmonger, and you had Thor facing off against Loki, and you had Captain America versus Red Skull, I thought that, the ultimate thing that they could get, I thought that was ultimately going to be a deterrent for the future of this franchise. I thought that they weren't creating enough interesting conflicts. However, Black Panther brings back that kind of mirror antagonism once again, and I was completely blown away by the results. Michael B. Jordan's performance is not only stunning, which we kind of expect just because his past work with Ryan Coogler in Creed and Fruitvale Station is just phenomenal work, but the thing that I just want to highlight most about Eric Killmonger is the fact that he has a philosophy that in many ways I actually agreed with. It wasn't about, obviously his tactics were a bit screwed up. The fact that he, essentially wanted to go to war with the world using vibranium resources in order to do so. That's obviously not cool, but it had such an amazing effect on the larger plot of this movie, which is, I mean, just as how many superhero blockbusters do you get that happen to be about a nation's border policy? It's perfect for our times in terms of just all the current issues that our world is facing, but also just the diametrically opposed viewpoints of both the protagonist and antagonist is among the best we've ever seen in a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. So you obviously have T'Challa on one side, who believes that Wakanda has survived for centuries without being invaded, without being conquered, without being colonized, because it has kept to itself, and it knows that it has this valuable resource that the world would want to get their hands on, because obviously it could do amazing things. Wakanda has done amazing things with it. So that is a completely understandable viewpoint. But then you have Eric Killmonger, who, again, this is a completely spoiler-filled discussion. You have Eric Killmonger, who knows about Wakanda, has known about Wakanda his entire life, thanks to the tales that have been told to him by his father, which, by the way, if you rewatch Black Panther and you listen to that fairy tale at the beginning, understanding that it is, I think his name is Njobu, telling his son, about Wakanda and this magical nation where all this incredible, where it's kind of escaped from the entire rest of the world, which has so many incredible problems. You totally understand where Eric Killmonger is coming from, and you see he carries the pain of an entire oppressed people from around the world with him, and he wants it to change, and can you blame him? So it sets up this incredible conflict. I love just the dynamic of him coming into Wakanda, and just the cultural expansion of Wakanda is in and of itself something that's amazing. I love just the kind of ritual nature of everything about it. The fact that Eric Killmonger is a mercenary who who purposefully, who like specifically knows exactly when to go in, when to topple governments, and chooses this time when a new king has just been coronated following the assassination of the previous one. It's just all so incredibly well woven and such a great just rebound after the events of Captain America: Civil War. I was just totally blown away by the antagonistic plot, by the antagonist plot in Black Panther, and I think that is ultimately what makes this movie so special. That being said, there are also, I mean, there's just so many things to appreciate. I mean, the entire supporting cast of this movie, obviously we had the chance to meet T'Challa in Captain America: Civil War. We kind of got a good sense of who he is, but like in the same way that Spider-Man: Homecoming wasn't so much about like wasn't a origin story for Peter Parker and Spider-Man, instead introducing like the kind of world he lives in. That's really the big thing that that the solo Black Panther movie is. And I was just, the supporting cast that Ryan Coogler has put together in this film is absolutely amazing. Obviously, people are all over talking about Shuri, played by Letitia Wright, who is T'Challa's younger sister, who established as the smartest person in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and just a scene stealer in every single moment, whether she's at Warrior Falls and just like trying to get the whole thing to run along, or just using this absolutely incredible technology. I gotta say, I was completely blown away by the devices used to remote control cars for that entire Korean sequence, that car chase. Is one of the coolest things ever. I was practically jumping up and down in my seat. I thought I was so excited by all that. But to jump to questions, we have from Alistair Murray, who asked, so does Spider-Man and Iron Man have this tech from Wakanda now? That is an interesting question and something I definitely wanted to talk about. So, again, this is kind of talking about the Infinity War footage that we've seen from both from the first trailer that was released a few months ago and the Super Bowl spot. So it has been made very clear that Wakanda is an incredibly important location in Infinity War. There is a big showdown that's going down between the Avengers and kind of the alien invading forces. But there is one specific shot, and I assume, Alistair, this is kind of what you're referring to, the one specific shot of Iron Man having his armor put on. And if you look, it's like super, super quick. It's in the Super Bowl spot, but it essentially looks like Iron Man's armor is kind of creeping onto him. And now, from Iron Man 3, we know that that Tony Stark has figured out a way to kind of get his armor to kind of remote control directly to his body. But from that footage, what it essentially looked like is that Shuri might have designed Tony Stark a brand new vibranium suit that operates in the same way as Black Panther's, which is obviously just kind of all contained within this necklace, and creates an entirely new kind of Iron Man suit, which is super cool. Obviously, like, if you have vibranium, you have the ability to use what is basically the most versatile substance on the entire Earth, the strongest metal on Earth. Of course, you're going to use that to make a new Iron Man suit. That just makes every kind of sense. As for Spider-Man, though, that I'm not as sure about. It's entirely possible that, the big new revelation for Spider-Man costume-wise that we saw in both the Infinity War trailer and the Super Bowl spot is that he's actually going to be wearing the suit that we saw at the very end of Spider-Man: Homecoming that Tony Stark was going to give him, which it's not named, but people have been referring to it as the Iron Spider, which is a costume that Spider-Man got in the comics, which was a costume, believe it or not, designed by Tony Stark. So it does look like Spider-Man's going to be going from his kind of Tony Stark made ones into that Iron Spider costume. The question I guess you're asking is whether or not Spider-Man, like that Iron Spider suit, will in turn be made from vibranium. Hard to say at this point. I think right now, the impulse for me to, the instinct I have is to just say, no, that's probably just the same suit that Tony Stark made for the end of Spider-Man: Homecoming, and he's probably just wearing that. It's not necessarily a vibranium upgrade. But, who can really say at this point? We've only seen brief glimpses of the film to this point, so it's entirely possible that it's entirely possible that the footage that we have seen of the Iron Spider suit is just that, is the spider suit that we saw from the end of Homecoming. But before the end of the movie, Shuri has designed a brand new one that is made out of has the same design, but made out of vibranium. It's entirely possible. We don't know. But I will actually just speak to that point, and actually from the end credits of Black Panther kind of reflecting on Infinity War, because one thing that struck me about Black Panther, if you really think about it, so the movie starts almost immediately after Civil War. You have there's references to T'Challa bringing in Zemo to Martin Freeman's character, Everett Ross, detaining him and kind of clearing up that whole international incident. So we know, like, it's very shortly after that. Plus, of course, T'Challa is still dealing with the aftermath of his father's death, which very, very fresh, raw, and they haven't had time to install him as the new king just yet. So just from the very start of the story, we know that it is set, I believe if we are saying that Civil War is set in 2016, that this story essentially takes place right in 2016 as well. And then if you just follow kind of the progression of the story from right after his coronation, he's immediately off to South Korea to go try and deal with the Claw situation. He comes back after the Claw after losing Claw, and obviously has to kind of lick his wounds. But almost immediately after that, Killmonger kills Claw and then brings him to Wakanda to kind of start his whole invasion thing. And then from there, Killmonger, quote unquote, kills T'Challa at Warrior Falls. There obviously isn't that much time that's passed in between that because, I mean, obviously T'Challa can't be gone for that long. So you have the whole climb into the mountains with Ramonda and Nakia and Everett Ross. So by the end of the story, you have maybe at most 2 weeks pass, which and at the end of the movie, you obviously have Wakanda opening its borders and deciding that it's time to be a bigger part of the world and sharing their resources. So I am legitimately curious, given the fact that so much has changed, like if we only know how the world exists from maybe the end of 2016 to where Infinity War picks up, which, mind you, is going to be around 2018, I'm curious how much the Marvel Universe is going to change in that time span. From another question, from Elise Uskov asks, who thinks Klaue isn't out of the picture yet? Definitely want to talk about this because it's a controversial thing that I've actually been talking about with Sean O'Connell, our another editor at CinemaBlend, because and we've wrote a piece on CinemaBlend that you can actually read. That I know there are some people who don't love that Klaue was killed off. Klaue, I think Andy Serkis did an absolutely phenomenal job bringing that character to life. He is very different than he is in the comics, but he is so charismatic and so weird and so, like, I hate to make the comparison because it feels stupid just to make the comic book comparison, but there are certain Joker elements to that character because it's not a character who latches onto any specific philosophy. He seems to kind of just be perfectly selfish and going out for himself and acting in favor of chaos, which is a cool character element. So I can understand why people would be upset about him being killed off and not having him anymore in the universe. Two things I'll say to that, though. One, Eric Killmonger, I think, absolutely needed to kill Klaue off. The way that this movie is set up, the entire, the way that he's able to convince W'Kabi that that Killmonger is on the up and up is to prove that he could get the job done that T'Challa couldn't, and that changes everything. That allows Eric Killmonger to get into Wakanda immediately, gives him kind of a backing with the border tribe, and thrust the entire movie forward. So while I do get that killing off Klaue is it's a bummer because you're killing off such a cool character, it was of such importance to the plot that I do think it was ultimately necessary. That being said, to more address the question, of course you could bring Klaue back. I mean, this is a comic book franchise. I don't necessarily want to see him brought back from the dead. I don't think that's necessary. But I mean, this is a character who has been operating since, I guess, the early 1990s. So this is a franchise. I mean, hell, Captain Marvel is going to be set in the 90s. So could Klaue show up in that movie? Maybe. I don't know. But it's on the table. And the fact that we could see plenty of Marvel stories that are set any time between now and the last 30 years. So, is it possible that Klaue could make a comeback? Absolutely. And you could do it even in a way without betraying the really perfect death for the character that happens in Black Panther. New question from Daniel Melvin. He said, I hope to see the Soul Gem. That is something we've actually talked about on past episodes of HeroBlend. There was a lot of speculation, especially I think after the second trailer came out, that maybe maybe the Soul Stone, which is the only Infinity Stone that we have not yet seen, would be revealed in Black Panther. Turns out that wasn't the case. There was the theory at large, from kind of what I understood and from what I read, is that kind of the Soul Stone was part of kind of what powered vibranium and allowed it to be kind of the resource that it was for the nation of Wakanda. if I'm being perfectly honest, I was never super on board with that idea, just because I feel like it undercuts vibranium in a certain way. You don't like vibranium is in and of itself an element that has certain like origins where it came from this asteroid and crashed down to Earth, and it doesn't. I don't need kind of you don't need to put a hat on top of a hat in a certain sense. I like even talking with Ryan Coogler, he mentioned that in the comics, vibranium is a MacGuffin of certain extent, simply because it's a material that you can really use in any single plot. That you don't necessarily need it to be defined in any single way. You can just use it as that. And the Infinity Stones are in many ways the same thing. So to kind of just combine them together, that never really sat well with me. I'm kind of okay with the Soul Stone not being so. I'm okay with the Soul Stone not being in Black Panther, and it makes me all the more excited to see Infinity War and say like, well, if we haven't seen the Soul Stone yet, where the hell has it been? So yeah, we only have a couple more months before we get to figure that out, but so be it. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but thank you guys for the awesome questions. I hope you guys loved Black Panther as much as I did. Of course, you can always hit up CinemaBlend, where we have tons of Black Panther coverage from our features, from our interviews, from our news stories, from updates, to everything that's going on in the future. Just all over CinemaBlend right now, because we are completely obsessing about this film. Of course, HeroBlend is always on the CinemaBlend Facebook page on Thursdays at 1 p.m. PST, 4 p.m. EST. I always love talking with you guys, and I'm sure we'll have another awesome topic to discuss next week. So we'll see you next time.